Look, we are launching a full deep dive into our paddock notes today because honestly, what we just witnessed at the 2026 Barcelona Grand Prix, it wasn't just a bad Sunday of racing.
No, not at all. It was a disaster class.
Exactly. It was a categorical slow-motion systems failure for Aston Martin.
Oh.
You look at that paddock, you look at the sheer exhaustion on the faces along the pit wall, and you just know the absolute truth.
Right.
This team is in an explosive existential crisis right now.
Yeah, I mean, the tension around that garage, it is physically suffocating.
It is, and we are cutting straight through the corporate PR spin today. We're opening up our internal telemetry to break down exactly what is happening inside the Silverstone squad. We are talking about a broken machine, a totally shattered qualifying streak, and a massive, desperate engineering gamble.
A gamble that could completely implode the second half of their season, frankly.
Yep. So let's start with the sheer scale of the meltdown at Montmeló, because the contrast between the expectation and the reality there is just staggering.
It really is.
This was supposed to be the grand homecoming for Fernando Alonso. You have the packed grandstands, the expectation of a hero's welcome, and what do they deliver?
A car so undrivable he gets knocked out in Q1.
A miserable P22 qualifying performance. He is forced to start from the pit lane after a desperate battery change under parc fermé conditions, and then the car just dies on track.
Yeah.
A total DNF.
Yeah, a complete unmitigated failure.
But here is the stat that absolutely floors me when I look at the historical data. 41 races. For 41 consecutive races, Fernando Alonso outqualified his teammate. And that streak is officially dead.
You really have to let the gravity of that number sink in, because the last time Lance Stroll outqualified Fernando Alonso on pure pace
Was Silverstone 2024.
Exactly. That is an absolute eternity in modern Formula One. I mean, that streak was a testament to Alonso's sheer ruthless willpower, right? His ability to just drag a subpar car by the scruff of its neck into grid positions. It fundamentally has no business occupying.
Right, but the AMR26 has completely broken that dynamic now.
It has. The chassis is so inherently flawed, so violently unpredictable on corner entry that even a two-time world champion literally cannot outdrive the physics anymore.
And you hear the brutal internal honesty on the radio and in the debriefs. It's shocking. I mean, Alonso isn't playing the corporate game anymore.
No, the gloves are off.
He is flat out calling the AMR26 the worst car on the grid with the worst engine. He is publicly tearing into the terrible energy distribution, the abysmal aerodynamics, the completely broken gearbox.
Even Honda's track boss, Shintaro Orihara, was out there essentially mourning the sheer tragedy of this happening at Alonso's home race.
It's humiliating for them. But look, looking at this telemetry, I really have to push back on the narrative that this is just a mechanical failure.
Okay, what do you mean?
Well, I'm looking at his braking points, and they are incredibly erratic. Are we watching a mechanical failure, or are we watching the psychological breaking point of a two-time world champion who is just tired of empty promises?
I wouldn't call it a psychological break. No, I would call it a psychological adaptation to a mechanical nightmare.
It's like a master swordsman finally fighting with a blade so dull it won't even cut anymore.
That's exactly it. The psychological toll you're seeing in the telemetry is a direct, unavoidable symptom of the hardware failure. You just cannot separate the two in a high downforce machine.
Right.
When you have a driver of Alonso's caliber, a guy who feeds entirely on tactile feedback from the chassis, and that chassis starts lying to him, the engine hesitates, the gearbox betrays him, the trust just evaporates.
And in Formula One, when you lose trust in the rear axle, lap time just hemorrhages in massive chunks.
Exactly. Which completely recontextualizes what happened literally 3 days later at the exact same circuit.
Yes. The 2027 Pirelli tire tests. Let's talk about this because this is where things get really bizarre.
Right. The C2 slicked compound tests. This is where the narrative shifts from a catastrophic race weekend to a highly questionable, high-risk strategic pivot for the entire rest of the season.
Because you have a grueling track temperature of 57 degrees Celsius in Barcelona. I mean, those are pristine gold dust conditions to gather crucial thermal degradation data for next year's rubber.
The kind of data teams would kill for.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And look at what the rest of the grid does with that opportunity. Ferrari puts Charles and Arthur Leclerc in the car, and they are doing massive, highly productive mileage. Charles puts down a 1.116.619.
Blistering pace.
And Cadillac is out there too, even fighting through some of their own technical hiccups. Zhu Guanyu is putting in the grueling work, gathering that aero correlation data. And Aston Martin.
Oh, this is the craziest part.
They throw Jack Crawford in the car on day one. He runs 146 agonizing laps, and he is painfully off the pace. We're talking a 1.23.709.
7 seconds off Ferrari.
7.
7 seconds. And then day 2 arrives.
And they simply vanish.
They completely ghosted day 2. They packed up the garage and didn't even show up to a sanctioned Formula One track test. In an era where testing data is strictly limited by the FIA and worth its weight in absolute gold, Aston Martin just deliberately walked away. Well, you have to look at it from an engineering economics perspective, right?
How so?
In the cost cap era, running that car costs a massive amount of money and allocation per kilometer. If your chassis is fundamentally corrupting the tire data because the suspension is violently reacting to a broken gearbox and a stalling floor, any data you gather on that 2027 C2 compound is completely garbage.
So they're just feeding poison data into their wind tunnel correlation?
Precisely.
Wow. I mean, this is like walking out halfway through your final exams because you know you've already failed and just banking on going to summer school.
That is exactly what it is. And Alonso essentially confirmed this internally.
Right.
The team is entirely abandoning the current development of the AMR26. They're banking everything on a completely new B-spec car and a heavily revised engine arriving in the second half of the year.
But I have to challenge this. Is completely writing off half a season a stroke of ruthless, pragmatic genius? Or are they just waving a massive white flag because they have no idea how to fix the current floor?
Look, it is ruthless pragmatism born out of absolute necessity. They have looked at the wind tunnel data, they've looked at the track correlation, which clearly isn't matching the simulation, and they realized that throwing carbon fiber upgrades at a fundamentally flawed architecture is just burning cost cap space.
So they are betting the entire factory on the B-spec.
Yes. But to understand why this gamble has such a massive variance in potential outcome, we have to look under the engine cover.
Yes. Let's get into the deep mechanical guts of this machine. Because it's not just a slow car. It is failing spectacularly in very specific, highly technical ways.
Completely. Let's unpack the power unit and the gearbox nightmare.
Okay, I was looking at the ADUO regulations, the engine update.
Yeah.
From what I understand, because these rules are strictly designed around reliability and specific efficiency parameters, they inherently favor the teams that are currently failing the hardest.
Yes, exactly.
So is Honda basically utilizing their own massive inefficiencies here to trigger a complete backdoor redesign?
I wouldn't say they are utilizing incompetence. I'd say they are weaponizing the rulebook.
Weaponizing the rulebook. I love that.
Well, think about it. The FIA restricts engine development to prevent a billion-dollar spending war, right? If you have already maximized your package, look at Ferrari, look at Cadillac running those customer Ferrari engines, look at Mercedes. They have squeezed almost every single drop of thermodynamic efficiency out of their systems.
Right. They have zero margin left to find.
Exactly. But Honda's baseline efficiency is currently so terrible, they have a massive, legitimate engineering justification to overhaul their system under the guise of reliability.
Because their electrical deployment is a massive bottleneck right now. For you listening, think of the electrical deployment like water pressure.
That's a good way to put it.
If Honda currently has, say, a 600-amp inverter, that's basically a garden hose. Alonso floors the throttle out of a low-speed corner. He needs instantaneous torque. But the inverter physically cannot push the electricity from the battery to the motor fast enough.
Right.
But if the ADUO rules allow Honda to justify upgrading to a 900-amp system, suddenly they have a fire hose.
That is precisely the mechanism at play. If Honda can pinpoint that their issue is the inverter, or if they completely rewind the electric motor's copper coils to operate more efficiently for better harvesting.
The gains would be huge.
Massive. The lap time gains aren't measured in hundredths of a second like Ferrari's updates. They are measured in massive, multi-tenth chunks of time. They have the highest theoretical performance ceiling on the grid right now, simply because their floor is so abysmally low.
Okay, so the engine has this theoretical high ceiling if Honda can get their act together for the B-spec. But then we hit the transmission.
The gearbox.
And this is where the engineering logic absolutely melts for me. The gearbox crisis. We are seeing in our telemetry notes that the gears on the AMR26 are literally desynchronizing whenever the car drops below 40 kilometers per hour in slow corners.
It's true.
How does a multi-million-dollar technologically pinnacle Formula One car fail at driving slowly?
Because it is a catastrophic failure of a proprietary electronic mechanical handshake. You have to understand that a modern Formula One gearbox is not just a mechanical set of metal cogs. It is a microscopic, highly sensitive electronic symphony.
Okay.
At 300 kilometers an hour, the engine has massive rotational inertia. The shifts are violent, but they are supported by massive momentum.
Right.
But below 40 kilometers an hour, there's almost no inertia. The engine is practically idling.
And when a driver requests a downshift in that state, the electronic control unit has to perfectly execute a micro-throttle blip to match the revs, otherwise the gears just clash.
Exactly. And Aston Martin decided to run their own custom programming and their own proprietary solenoids to actuate those shifts.
Oh boy.
At low speeds, those bespoke solenoids and the synchronization software are completely falling out of sequence.
Just totally out of sync.
The latency is off by milliseconds. The engine and the gearbox literally stop talking to each other, and it sends a massive, unpredictable mechanical shockwave straight to the rear axle.
It's exactly like riding a bicycle in top gear. When you're sprinting down a hill, you can shift fine. But if you slow down to a walking pace and try to force a gear change without any forward momentum, the resistance is too high, the timing is off, and the chain slips right off the sprocket.
That's a perfect analogy.
But here is what I don't get. Why on earth did Aston Martin insist on building their own bespoke gearbox casing and internals instead of just taking the entire proven package from Honda? Honda builds the power unit. They know exactly how the torque is delivered.
It comes down to championship ambition versus operational reality.
Meaning?
Historically, taking a customer gearbox is the safe play. It guarantees reliability. But Aston Martin wants to be a totally independent, works-level manufacturer. You cannot beat Ferrari or Mercedes if you are locked into a customer gearbox because the gearbox casing dictates your inboard rear suspension pickup points.
So they gambled on aerodynamic freedom. They wanted to design their own rear suspension geometry and get a tighter Coke bottle aerodynamic shape at the rear, but they completely forgot they actually need the gears to shift smoothly. Is it championship ambition or is it just engineering hubris?
It is the absolute definition of hubris when your electronic department cannot cash the checks your aerodynamic department is writing. In chasing that hyper-aggressive packaging, they designed a mechanical and electronic system that they clearly do not possess the calibration knowledge to manage. They shrunk the casing, they changed the thermal dynamics of the solenoids, and now the system is just melting down in slow corners.
And we are seeing the violent physical results of this hubris on the track. Bring this back into the cockpit for a second, because the telemetry only tells half the story.
Right.
Just imagine trying to pilot a 1,000 horsepower aerodynamic missile when you literally do not trust the transmission to keep the rear wheels stable on corner exit.
We saw the prime terrifying symptom of this at Monaco. Look back at our notes on Alonso's uncharacteristic snap and that minor crash at the exit of the tunnel.
Yes, the tunnel exit snap. Everyone thought he just lost focus or pushed too hard on cold tires, but you're saying that was the gearbox desynchronization in real time.
100%. He comes through a slow section, the RPMs drop, the gearbox misinterprets the torque demand on the upshift, the proprietary solenoid fails to sync the RPM, and it sends a violent, unpredictable spike of torque through the rear axle.
And in a Formula One car, if the rear wheels get a sudden, uncommanded spike of torque mid-corner while loose,
spin
instant.
distantly. There is no catching it.
It's terrifying. And the cost to lap time is devastating. It is not just the 0.3 of a second loss during the actual mechanical glitch. It's the psychological bleed that happens on every single corner afterward.
Exactly.
Because the gear shifts are a lottery, Alonso and Stroll lose complete confidence in the entry and mid-corner phase.
Yeah.
I look at the brake traces, and they are braking 10 meters earlier.
They have to.
They are braking less aggressively. They are physically bracing themselves for a snap of oversteer in every single slow corner. It's like trying to run a full-speed sprint on a patch of black ice. You physically cannot commit your weight to the stride because your brain is screaming that you're about to fall.
And in Formula One, a lack of trust in the rear end bleeds massive lap time purely through hesitation. You cannot overdrive a car. You cannot find the absolute limit of the tire adhesion if your brain is screaming at you to brace for an impact. You are leaving half a second on the table simply out of self-preservation.
Right.
Now, there is a precedent for overcoming these mechanical gremlins within a season. Remember a few years back when they had those severe steering vibration issues?
Yeah, I remember that.
They eventually solved it by utilizing physical countermeasures, adding heavy dampening to the steering column to mask the geometric flaw.
Right, they treated the symptom because they couldn't cure the disease under the cost cap.
Exactly. They need a similar paradigm shift for this gearbox, and fast. They need a software patch or mechanical damper that softens that torque spike, even if it costs them a fraction of shift speed, just to give the drivers their confidence back.
But can they do it before the season is completely lost? That is the ultimate question we are staring down as we look at our paddock notes today.
It's a huge mountain to climb.
Let's synthesize the sheer, terrifying scale of this mountain. As we speak, Aston Martin possesses the most inefficient engine on the grid. They have a bespoke gearbox that operates like a randomized torque bomb in slow corners.
Yeah.
They have a driver lineup completely and utterly starved of confidence, bleeding lap time to pure hesitation. And they just abandoned crucial 2027 tire testing to bet the entire factory, the wind tunnel, and the cost cap on a massive B-spec summer update.
But that is exactly why this situation is the most incredibly volatile dynamic on the grid right now. Paradoxically, because their current package is so comprehensively flawed, because the Honda electrical deployment is bottlenecked by a weak inverter, because the proprietary gearbox is desyncing, they possess the absolute highest potential upside of any team.
Right, because the baseline is so low.
Exactly. If those ADUO updates allow Honda to unlock that 900-amp electrical efficiency, and if the B-spec chassis arrives with a recalibrated gearbox casing that actually functions, the leap in performance could be violent.
We aren't just talking about finding a tenth of a second here.
No, we are talking about jumping from the back of the grid straight into podium contention purely by fixing their own self-inflicted wounds.
It is the biggest, most aggressive gamble of the 2026 season, bar none. They are completely sacrificing the present to salvage the future.
They have no other choice.
But I want to leave you with a chilling question to ponder as we watch this drama unfold on the tarmac over the next few weeks. We know the paddock promises have been made. We know the B-spec car is in the wind tunnel. The overhauled engine is on the dyno. But if this promised second half of the season upgrade arrives, and the AMR 26 rolls out of the garage at Zandvoort, and is still fighting the physics at the back of the grid,
Oh, man.
at what point does a relentless, bloodthirsty competitor like Fernando Alonso finally decide that no amount of engineering promises can fix a fundamentally broken machine? Keep your eyes on the timing screens, because the next few months aren't just going to define the rest of this season, they're going to define the very survival of this team's championship ambitions.